commercial. We got the whole commercial there at the front. Thank you, Filmora Wondershare, who I forgot to pay again this week to remove the watermark from our film. That's a thing I'll have to get done. Hi, everybody. Welcome to So Local Live. I am Greg Smithwick. That's Sam Ronan, and that is Kyrie Edwards, right?
Yes.
I got so worried about your first name that I completely zoomed on your last name.
Edward, but, common misconception.
But I go by Igor because Dr. Frankenstein. Okay, we got this.
There's a silent welcome in the middle, throws everyone off.
All right. So Sam and Kyrie, you guys have a history together. You've been activists together. I think you guys did a show for a while together. Did you not? A podcast or some such thing like that?
I mean, we didn't do a show, but Tampa Bay for change, Florida for change. I mean, this is the change gang. It's just us two ripping and yelling at local politicians we did or did not like.
Right.
Yeah.
We did randomly interview a couple politicians. I don't think we could call it a show, though.
Yeah. No, we did a couple of these like town halls where we talked to some politicians we liked, or elected official, not even really elected officials. God, nobody was elected.
And so we were only
media
to talk to them like the whole cycle.
Oh my goodness. All right. Yeah. So for those of you joining us, thank you very much. I know it's for many people a national holiday. I have to tell you, I have never felt less like celebrating the 4th of July than I do this year. It was my dad's favorite holiday. Our family ancestor who owned other people, was a 4th of July 1820 birth. So, it's the weekend of the year when my dad, when he was alive, always tried to gather a big family reunion, and we could all play Who You Kin To and reacquaint ourselves with other far-flung branches of the family. Much of that family is on the exact opposite side of the political spectrum for me. So it's been a challenging decade with my dad's family. I don't think that I'm more woke, I hate that fucking word, than I was, but I think that they have definitely succumbed to some really the peer pressure of other racists and misogynists, and that's where they live now, and it's been difficult. So, but this year, I can't. How am I going to celebrate my independence when I know that my fiance, who has identified as gay for many, many years, and my friends and family, my friends of color, especially half the population newly has lost civil rights that they had a month ago. I don't understand how I'm supposed to celebrate that. Whenever I've been in the American flag, kneeling for the flag conversation, one of the things I've reminded my fellow middle-aged cis white guys is every African American I know who ever got unjustly beat by the police was beat by somebody wearing that flag. Every Native American I know who was ever tear gassed trying to preserve their lands was tear gassed by people wearing that flag. It lands differently for them than it does for you. And I'm more and more aware this week that the vast majority of women that I know are feeling like that flag doesn't represent them anymore, because truly it doesn't.
Awkward
thoughts.
No, I mean, I'm gonna let the black man offer his thoughts on whether or not he likes the American flag. What do you think, man?
No pressure, Kyrie. No pressure at all.
I think it could go for a better redesign. It's kind of plain, some weird messages.
I wasn't expecting you to just focus on like aesthetic issues.
Well, he's seen our flag means death, and he's got ideas.
It's like the American flag looks awful. It is terrible.
I mean, 4th of July is like a bargain bin Juneteenth, but I mean, the barbecue's okay.
Happy 15 days after Juneteenth.
But yeah, no, it's always been an awkward holiday, and it gets more awkward every year. This year, at least, it seems like people are acknowledging that, we're an empire, and that, we're doing the things that empires do, taking away everyone's rights and oppressing people and such. But yeah, it seems like most people are still complaining about the gas prices while spending $500 on fireworks. So I don't know what to do with that. But
what are the fireworks delivering via like one of the food delivery apps now? Because I've been seeing people complain about not having gas all week, and somehow they managed to get $800 worth of fireworks to their house 2 doors down from mine. I don't know. But I want to key on something that Kiri said, which was Kyrie. Jesus Christ, I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All
5
right.
minutes in.
wow,
I promise I wasn't
accounting
pre-gaming. I promise I wasn't pre-gaming. Anywho, that this has always been an awkward holiday. Like I've never thought of it that way. Guess why? You know, I think like I've seen some people that are so this is your red line, and I'm like, yeah, you know, for some people it is. For some people, looking around their own house now makes them uncomfortable that there are girls and women in their house who have lost their independence of action and thought, or of action anyway. And I hope that's uncomfortable for a whole lot of men like me. I think we need to be a lot more uncomfortable than we've been. And I think that's why the blocking traffic protests made people so angry 2 summers ago, was because it was it made you feel like things were out of your control. That's what protests are supposed to do, is make sure you understand that your control is finite. That there's going to come a moment when you step too far and you lose a lot more control than you've had. And we hope you will help us avoid that. That's kind of how I've always looked at that. But yeah, Kyrie, that really landed with me. And it has always been one of my favorite holidays because it was my dad's. You know, it was a thing I shared with my dad. He's gone, long gone. And now I feel like it's not a thing that I should be celebrating today. I think we celebrate November 6th instead. I think that would be maybe a better use of our fireworks. And that's not a euphemism. I mean actual store-bought fireworks there, just in case the feds are listening. Sam, what's new today? You were out and about somewhere. What was going on?
I was. So Florida Exchange was a proud co-sponsor of an action this morning. We took over Riverwalk over in Tampa in the Curtis Hickson Park area, MacDill Park. And, you know, it went pretty well, all things considered. I mean, we talk about making people uncomfortable. And one of my issues has been that a lot of protests lately, I haven't really felt that anyone was being particularly inconvenienced. And what's interesting about Riverwalk is that it is absolutely loaded with just people with too much money. If you ever go down there, if they're not tourists or they're not houseless people trying to get shelter, and by the way, Riverwalk has benches with those anti-homeless bars.
Of course they do.
Lancaster, fuck the city of Tampa government. But everyone else there is in, like very expensive athletic wear, and they're, with their designer dogs in the middle of the day. They're having the time of their lives. And sure enough, as we're marching through, pretty good crowd. A lot of these just rich, entitled white motherfuckers who were just like,
You made some people uncomfortable.
Right. Which, hey, with a low bar, that makes me happy. I am happy about that. But that's what we were doing. We had a great bunch of speakers, give or take. We had my good friend Sheridan Murphy from Florida Indigenous Alliance, I believe is the actual name of the organization. I'm constantly using the acronym, so I'm like, what does it stand for?
Right.
And he made a point of saying, what we've kind of been talking about, don't just vote. There's actually a lot of tactics, some you might not have considered in terms of getting change to happen. And I think that was good and healthy for everyone there. Because it definitely was not commonly held by a lot of the other speakers.
Well, that's definitely something that I have in mind to talk about today. I have a couple of tweet links up about that.
I'm ready,
so
man.
You ready to go through some of that? Let me pull up.
I had a quick question.
I'm always ready, man.
Sure.
When you say other tactics, you mean like donating whenever we get a text to donate to the Democratic Party, right?
Oh, I mean, of course. Every single time that Nancy Pelosi emails me and she gets either my name or for some reason my dad's, because their targeting is not very good. So it's either going to be like, Samuel, you have to give $15 right now, or I'm not going to be able to afford my luxury brand ice cream. Help me. Or, it's my dad's name. I give immediately. because change.
I have to say, I went to Riverwalk Saturday night, and I did buy overpriced ice cream. I can't remember the name of the restaurant or ice cream place. It's really good. But we also saw this guy there.
It was Jenny's.
Yeah, they had sunshine ice cream. I was like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I see what you're talking about. It was like a wonderful and horrible place. There was like so much. It's like empty space where there could be homes there, but we're not.
Right.
multi-million-dollar buildings instead.
Right. Yeah, I remember when that place was still like in the planning phase 8 million years ago when dinosaurs roamed the earth. You had to fight off pterodactyls down there on North Davis Island. Nobody thought that was ever going to develop into anything down there.
Right.
They built a bunch of homes down there and then pulled up the drawbridge behind them and became like a little enclave. All right. So this is what I got. I hit on this thread the other night, and it's not happy. It's not a happy, fun time thread. It's by Tom Hartman, and it is the nightmare scenario SCOTUS is plotting for the 24 election takeover. Tom is a pretty famous progressive talk show host, Sirius FM, Free Speech TV, Nationwide Radio. He has a podcast. Hartman Report is hartmanreport.com is his website if you want to read his work. And I'm not 100% clear on Hartman's bona fides. I don't know. Just as I'm mispronouncing things, I might as well just go all in. But I want to read this thread to you. It's a lot of posts, but they're very short. So this is how Tom Hartman sees what the Supreme Court is doing, and it assumes a couple of things. It assumes that this is happening with a plan, that there's a conjunctive plan between the general conservative regressive movement and the Supreme Court or members of the Supreme Court. And I think that's something that used to sound like you should be wearing a tinfoil hat when you said it. I'm less and less sure of that as time goes by. It really does feel to me like the Supreme Court rushing through all these major civil rights impact decisions is not an accident. And I think it culminates in the 2024 presidential election, if not sooner. And listen, as a person that knocked doors and made phone calls for the entire year of 2018 and said this is the most important election of our lifetime, and then found myself saying it again in 2020, I know you think we're the boy who cried wolf or we're Chicken Little, but frankly, that we're going to run out of this is the most important elections of our lifetime and run into this is the last election of our lifetime. And I feel like I said in private to Sam earlier today, I feel like I'm just waiting for the flashpoint now. I feel like we're one disaster away from an actual shooting civil war in which all civil rights are suspended. I don't think that's an unrealistic look at what's coming. So I want to read this to you from Tom Hartman, but I'm going to follow it with a way that a society, albeit much smaller than us, and while being manipulated by us, moved themselves back from a fascist regime into democracy without a shooting war. So here, this is from Tom Hartman. Nightmare scenario: SCOTUS is plotting for the takeover of the 2024 election. 6 Republicans on the Supreme Court just announced a story that has largely flown under the nation's political radar that they'll consider pre-rigging the presidential election of 2024. Here's how one aspect of it could work out if they go along with the GOP's arguments that will be before the court in October, before this court this October. It's November 2024, and the presidential race is between Biden and DeSantis. It's been tabulated by the states and called by the networks. Biden won 84,355,000 votes to DeSantis' 77,366,000, clearly carrying the popular vote. But the popular vote isn't enough. George W. Bush lost to Al Gore by 500,000 votes. Donald Trump lost to Hillary Clinton by 3 million votes, but both ended up in the White House. What matters is the Electoral College vote, and that looks good for Biden, too. As CNN is reporting, the outcome is a virtual clone of the 2020 election. Biden carries the same states he did that year, and DeSantis gets all the Trump states. It's 306 to 232 in the Electoral College, a 74-vote Electoral College lead for Biden, at least as calculated by CNN and the rest of the media. Biden is heading to the White House for another 4 years. And don't forget that what they're going to say first is the media is misreporting this because they are all liberal elites from the East Coast. Until an announcement comes out of Georgia, although Biden won the popular vote in Georgia, their legislature has decided it can overturn the popular vote and just award the state's 16 electoral votes to DeSantis instead of Biden. An hour later, we hear from 5 other states with Republican-controlled legislatures where Biden won the majority of the vote, just like he had in 2020. North Carolina, 15 electoral votes. Wisconsin, 10. Michigan, 16. Pennsylvania, 20. And Arizona, 11. Each has followed Georgia's lead, and their legislatures have awarded the Electoral College votes, even though Biden won the popular vote in each state, to DeSantis. Thus, a total of 88 Electoral College votes from those 6 states moved from Biden to DeSantis, who is now declared the winner and will be sworn in on January 20th, 2025. Wolf Blitzer announces that DeSantis has won the election, and millions of people pour into the streets to protest. They're met with a hail of bullets as Republican-affiliated militias have been rehearsing for this exact moment. Just as happened when Pinochet's militias shot into crowds as he took over Chile, when Mussolini's volunteer militia, the black shirts, killed civilians and took over Italy, and Hitler's brown shirts did in Germany, their allies among the police and the army refused to intervene. After a few thousand people lay dead in the streets of 24 cities, the police began to round up surviving instigators who were charged with seditious conspiracy for resisting the Republican legislatures of their states. After he's sworn in as president, DeSantis points to the ongoing demonstrations, declares a permanent state of emergency, and suspends future elections, just as Trump had repeatedly told the world he planned to do for 2020. If that sounds far-fetched, remember, 6 Republicans on the Supreme Court just announced that one of the very first cases they will hear next year, that's in October, could include whether that very scenario is constitutional or not, and it almost certainly is. The Constitution only says on this that states, by whatever means they deem fair, are to determine who their electors are. So if you're a constitutional originalist, which we know is what this court is shaped for, that means that states get to decide how the electors are chosen. And if they change it to a system that says we can just name any slate we want regardless of the will of the people in their votes, that's constitutional federally. So this court case they're going to hear it in October. I don't know if there'll be a decision. Most of the legal experts I see seem to think it will be into January of next year before they make a decision on this case. But they're going to hear a case that is going to make this state legislative supremacy idea possibly precedent. And that would mean every state could then say, well, we're going to designate our electors thusly. At which point your vote and my vote, I've always been a person that yelled at people that said our vote doesn't matter. This is the moment when you will become right. This is the moment when the Georgia state legislature, the Florida state legislature, which you know is overwhelmingly red, will be able to just nullify any vote they don't like for any reason anywhere in their state and name their own slates of electors. So that's happy fun time for today.
Take a breath. Take a couple breaths. I had at least one person message me just now and be like, "Is your friend okay?"
Really?
Yeah, that was a lot, man. That was a lot, and
I read it. It's not like I thought this up, but when I read it, I thought this is something we should all be thinking about.
I know it was just like there was just such like it just built, it built to like this crescendo as it kept on going along. Oh, yeah,
when I got to the part where armed people started shooting protesters, I went, "Oh, that like happened at the 4th of July parade today." Right. Like you have, like that's the part of my day yesterday when I started thinking, all we need now is one flashpoint. That's all it's going to take is one event that puts armed people in the streets. The right keeps thinking that none of us know how to use weapons, but I want us to come up short of that moment, but I keep seeing it getting more and more distant as a goal.
Right. Yeah. Well, we were literally just talking about the fact that in St. Pete yesterday, the Uhuru movement, which is a radical Pan-African society over in that side of Pinellas, and I believe throughout the country, had their flag burned off the flagpole by a military-grade flamethrower. These militias, that all isn't particularly far-fetched.
Yep, there's the AP story right there.
Oh, look at him. He had it ready.
It's crazy. Yeah, what I was thinking when you were talking about that is even if it wasn't a militia, Again, recent Supreme Court decisions saying that, we basically can't regulate, states can't regulate guns and everyone can just have a concealed carry. It's like, okay, we know we have record levels of purchases of firearms, record levels of people carrying those firearms, and record levels of people using those firearms.
Right.
I can see a situation where, like you said, there's a flashpoint and people start shooting and then other people start shooting. So everyone's just shooting, which would have basically the same results.
Well, I feel like that's what they were trying to do in Idaho at the Pride rally, because there were reports of people carrying long guns in the crowd, which is legal in Idaho, and we live in a state where open carry is going to meet up with stand your ground. And how's that going to go? Because frankly, if I walk into 7-Eleven and you're carrying an AR-15, I'm going to feel like you're a threat. Don't matter what your intent is. That's not, unless you're, and this is for me, the white guy. I'm not afraid of police carrying AR-15s because generally they're not pointing them at me. But I think that's a calculus that is different for a vast number of people, probably myself soon, because of what I say and who I support.
Yeah. Speaking of all of that, if I could just divert for a second, because I caught this story recently. Can y'all see my screen?
No.
No, I can put it up. Hang on.
Oop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Y'all see it? Okay. So all of this terribleness, this is the Patriot Front. This is one of the militias, one of the right-wing militias that is active right now. And this is from 2 days ago when they marched in Boston. So they are mobilizing. They're already in the streets. It's not even a doomsday scenario that we have to prepare for. We don't really have prep time now. We kind of have to respond. 100 masked members of the white nationalist group Patriot Front marching through the city early Saturday afternoon.
Did it appear to you from watching the film clips that it looked to me like they were getting some police protection? Now, I understand professed neutrality. We're protecting them from being harmed.
Yeah. Some of them might have been wearing masks. So.
It did look bad, didn't it? Did it look bad, or was that just me?
No, it looked fucking terrible. But, one of the interesting things that I feel like no one's talking about from the January 6th committee is that a significant amount of the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys that were involved are ex-military and they're ex-police, which, people like Kyrie and I have been shouting from the fucking rooftops for years.
Right.
Like, hey, maybe there's a deeper problem here. Maybe it's really not hard to see, too.
No, it's not. And we know that they've set goals for infiltrating local law enforcement. We have direct evidence of the Newport Richey, Florida Police Department praying with the Proud Boys, literally with the Proud Boys in front of the Wing House on US 19 2 years ago, when peaceful protesters down the street were accosted and attacked by people on motorcycles and Proud Boys. And talk about a place where we're not talking about a scary protest. You know what I mean? It was like 12, 15 people standing downtown Newport Richey, walking the street with a bullhorn. Black Lives Matter. That was the level of protest that was going on. And there is video of the Proud Boys praying with Newport Richey Police Department uniformed officers right before violence broke out downtown. And when I challenged the current mayor, soon to be ex-mayor, on that, he's a Democrat, by the way, unfriended me and blocked me on Facebook immediately. Yeah.
They felt safe in his city. That's something for him to figure out why.
Well, after the first Pride, we went to the city council to ask them for a human rights ordinance because they were so supportive of Pride and designated it Pride Week, and everybody hung a Pride flag. So we asked them for a human rights ordinance protecting gay residents of the city, and they said, "Oh, that's not the kind of problems we have here, so we don't need that." Yeah. And now here we are. And by the way, some of my gay friends have moved out of the city of Newport Richey because they recognize pride washing when they see it. It's unfortunate. Let's see. So can they wear a mask to hide their identity, but not to keep grandma alive? Yeah, that's funny. Masks are not a violation of the civil rights now. And I love that my lefty friends.
It's okay if you're trying to look badass as fuck. If you're trying to look cool and cosplay, then it's very, very okay.
I like that we were out in front with, we're not only protecting our identities from police action, but also protecting our friends and neighbors from getting fucking COVID.
Right.
Yeah. Ooh, aren't we scary? Anyway. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
man.
So there's better news from Terry Kenneth.
Is there?
There is.
Oh.
Well, this is Tom Hartman mentioned Pinochet, right, in his tweet thread about the worst case scenario. So Terry Kenneth came back out with her understanding of how the Chilean thing, how it came back from the brink, and I thought this was pretty interesting. So I promise, when I read this, I won't get as worked up as I did the first time. Don't worry, guys, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Chile got out from under an actual dictator using peaceful means. It was much worse in Chile than here. The Chileans got out when enough people joined together to oppose authoritarianism. Here's the story of what happened, but first, my personal connection. My husband experienced Pinochet's dictatorship. He had to carry this to prove that he voted for Pinochet, meaning if you didn't vote for Pinochet, you could be locked up, arrested, beaten, tortured for whatever they felt like on the day. If you didn't bribe a local police officer enough for a speeding ticket, you got hauled in. Chile is a good example because, like the U.S. and unlike other countries that experience right-wing uprisings, Chile had a democratic tradition before the coup. They've had ups and downs. Before Pinochet, Chile had one of the strongest democracies in South America. Allende was the democratically elected president of Chile in 1973 when far right-wing General Pinochet pulled off his military coup and installed himself as dictator. And and in the following post, the coup was made possible partly because of a complete breakdown in trust between two of Chile's major political parties. Yeah, I know about U.S. involvement, and I want to make sure that I bring that to everyone's attention. That we were, guess what, supportive of fascists in early 70s South and Central America. The breakdown was so intense that prior to Pinochet's coup, political leaders from opposing parties wouldn't even speak to each other. Even after Pinochet was installed as a dictator, the disrupt persisted, eclipsing their shared revulsion towards Pinochet's dictatorship. In 1978, the opposing parties started talking. Eventually, they rebuilt trust. By 1985, the anti-Pinochet forces came together and signed a national accord for a transition to a full democracy. Not everyone joined. You'll never get the hardcore right-wingers. The talks staved off potentially destabilizing conflicts. The lesson: when enough people came together, democracy was restored. America has the chance to skip the dictator stage and just do what Chile did and get rid of Pinochet. The question is, will America do it? I've talked about what we can do about a radicalized Supreme Court, elect enough Democrats to Congress in 2022 to offset and mitigate the damage. We have three branches of government, and when one goes off the deep end, it can be checked by the other two. When I say the solution is to elect more Democrats in November of 2020, I get hit with a wave of, but what about? If enough people vote Democratic, it will happen. We have a chance to do it now when it's easier than getting out from under it later when there's an actual dictator in place, especially, and this is just my thinking, a dictator that has the most powerful military and police state apparatus at his disposal, much stronger than Pinochet had. So that I know that you guys think of me as an old fart. Vote harder. I get it. It's funny and I understand how it might land on people, but the frank reality is, if there's a carve out in the filibuster to increase the size of the Supreme Court, which I think is a good idea. It's been done before. It's not a radical change. It would match, if we go to 13, it would match the number of districts in the federal court system. There's lots of good things about doing that. Secondly, it allows us to carve out a filibuster exception, not even do away with the filibuster, to codify Roe, to do several other things about privacy legislation that now appear super urgent. And I always make this point about any person, family system, small village, large city, national, as people, we don't change things until there's enough pain. Like, pain is a motivator for people to change. When people in recovery talk about hitting rock bottom before they could get sober, guess what that means? It means maybe the third time you woke up on the ER table after having to be revived because you OD'd, right? Or losing a leg to diabetes before you quit drinking. Some people, some social groups and families and countries have to suffer a lot of pain before they make a change. A problem has to have real urgency. And I think whether that's right or wrong, I don't think the American people have had a sense of urgency about a curtailing of privacy and basic civil rights. But I think this is a moment where they could, and the way that they can express that in a way that maybe permanently, or at least temporarily, 20 years or so, kicking the can down the road, giving Democrats a solid majority in the House and Senate couldn't hurt. It's the only way we can say for sure we can relieve ourselves of this anxiety about what the fuck Sinema and Manchin are going to do. This is the only way to get through that anxiety. It's the only way to hope we can impact the Supreme Court. In the middle of the Trump administration, when people were asking, what can we do? Well, you can build a time machine, go back 2 years and vote for Hillary, because you didn't vote, or you put your vote on a libertarian candidate, had no chance. Maybe she was the better of two bad options for you, but clearly not choosing one of those two options is part of how we got here. And I know this is a fraught conversation, but I feel like Terry Kennefield is right in this way. Is it the only thing we can do? No. Are there other things that we're going to learn about that we can do? Yes, because that's what Sam wants to talk about today. But it can't hurt.
Today and every day, man.
It can't hurt to motivate our friends and neighbors to show the fuck up finally. They have to. White women, where are you at? You all just lost your civil rights too. More than half of you voted for Trump in 2020. Here you go.
Yeah.
Gosh, imagine this going exactly like we told you this would go. I just felt like I needed to say that I still believe that voting is a huge part of what we need to do to turn this around before the 2024 election. Sam, over to you.
Man, okay. Well, I mean, you went for a while. I've got a lot of different thoughts. I got to no, it's okay. I love it. You go on these huge rants, and then we get to talk for like a full hour about them. So, I mean,
almost as if I knew what I was doing.
So, I mean, one of the things that stuck out to me is just discussing the situation with Chile. They did get rid of a fascist government, but what was installed instead was mostly, a factor of being dicked around from Western neoliberalism. And their democracy has been really fucking fraught the entire time. I mean, we can barely call it democracy to a certain point. Chile got so bad, very similar to us in terms of income inequality and elites essentially running the government like oligarchs in all but name, that, they had countrywide protests a couple of years ago, elected a leftist candidate, and they're actively right now they're struggling with, but they're literally trying to rewrite their constitution because of how undemocratic it was. And that's the post-dictatorship constitution. So I don't want to throw water on the fire there, but it might not be the best roadmap of hey, look, they could do it, we could do it too. It's 30 years on, they're struggling.
Okay.
And voting harder didn't necessarily make that easier. One of the things that did help them get closer to change was countrywide riots. Shit got set on fire. Better people got elected. It's been a while since shit got set on fire, and they actually just had a recent right-wing surge I recently read. So,
yeah.
Yeah,
we've changed a lot in America with fire. I think I agree. I think voting is still part of the solution. I think where we keep getting stuck is in a situation where we have to vote for one party. You brought up, Hillary Clinton, which she was way better option than Donald Trump. But honestly, like that whole election
when
cycle,
the bar set low.
Yeah, was really bad, and lovely woman, good policies for the most part. I thought that there were a lot better candidates. I think she did too. Sure. And so we get into a cycle of, yes, we have to vote for these people, even if there's not wide support, even if there's no plan to address the problems that affect certain communities. in particular, even if they get into office like we see now, and they either can't or won't address the things that they said that they would. And so I see how people get demoralized. So I think we do have to have a massive increase in voters and actual votes, but we also need better platform, better politicians. Maybe some people like Dianne Feinstein to stop running every 6 years. Like I don't know if you guys have paid attention to all the stuff last week, but like our leadership, Senator Leahy fell and broke his hip. Cool. He looks like he's gonna recover. He's fine, but he shouldn't have ran last time or the time before that.
We really need more senators that bounce instead of snapping
right
when they hit the ground. We need more resiliency.
Right. We do, right. And we need people like when we have the Dobbs decision, I should say. I joked about the fundraising emails earlier, but like seriously though, like that seemed to be the plan. Like you had people like AOC, Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, like actually laying out a plan and saying, "Hey, we should do these things," and then immediately they're like, "Oh, we should have a leadership meeting to discuss what we're going to do about this decision that we've known about for like I don't know 50 years apparently."
Right.
Yeah.
So there's that lack of urgency that I was just talking about, right? It always felt like we could address this later, right. and I have to remind myself as well as others when I get angry and want to throw things at my television set that that Obama had a 77-day supermajority. In between pulling the economy out of a depression and all the other things that were happening, I'm not sure when people think now we look at it and go, God, this is the first thing he should have done. If it looks safe from there, then they bumped it down the agenda. And I listened to the guys that were part of that administration on Pod Save America, John Favreau, John Lovett, the other three white guys. And listen, they know they were all passionately advocating for things they thought were more important. And it just doesn't go your way sometimes. But now, as I say, it seems like as systems, we have to, shit's on fire, yo. We have to see a conflagration before we start getting buckets and running to the scene of the fire. I'm hoping that that's where we are. But I was hoping that's where we are after Columbine and after, Newtown and after 2016 to 2020 and January 6th and 2 impeachments. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to encourage people anymore.
I think one of the issues there is that we have people that are demanding urgency in voting. They're focusing on voting and donating to people running for office as the only real avenues of change. And then they themselves do
Virginia has the answer. Only have Democrats as children. That's the answer.
These people don't have urgency in their policies. I see a comment from Fred, and I like Fred. I don't know if I necessarily agree with Fred. He says, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I hear that a lot when we have these conversations, but I would argue that a lot of these people that are usually benefiting from that line of thinking are mediocre. I don't even know if they're necessarily aspiring to good. I think we're electing a lot of mediocre people that don't really meet the moment, and then they hide behind that kind of logic. I'm all for compromising when I need to. Frankly, given some of my leftism I don't talk about, I think electoral politics sometimes are itself a compromise. Bernie Sanders is a compromise for a lot of people.
Yep. There's Fred's comment right there. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, which is generally a thing I agree with when I'm making a deal with a partner for how to create something in a business. Yes. But are we nominating the right people to run in these elections? Look who showed up on day one of the Roe overturn with, as Kyrie said, with a plan. It was AOC and Ilhan Omar, had laid out some things you can do personally wherever you live to help the situation, to help others.
How fucking dare they? How dare they? Monster.
Well, imagine us voting for people with a plan. I don't want to start using the phrase dino for Democrat in name only, but they seem to be the only two people that showed up on Twitter with a real plan. Look, we know our tent is bigger than theirs. We know that even if there are moderate people under our tent and far left people under our tent, there's more of us. So, I think the burden is on us, as we are the people. I ran for my local mayor, my town's mayorship, because the last guy got, fired on a fucking SWAT team and got arrested. Right. So did I run because I was on an ego trip and I just wanted to be the mayor and be a cool guy that rode the parade? Fuck no. I wanted to show that somebody could be a renter in my town and care enough to want to lead the city through a crisis. And I know there are candidates like that are running and that want to run. I just don't know how we sort. Honestly, we need to ask some acid test questions. Do you think a 10-year-old child should have to bear, should have to bear a baby because she lives in Ohio? Do you think that should be okay? They got to answer that fucking question. And if they hem and they haw, next, I know that's not a person that I'm willing to invest money via email or time in as a candidate. It's okay for us to ask potential candidates. I don't want to tiptoe around the guy who has earned the right to run for our congressional seat. No, if your answers are not good, next. Well, but then again, I'm coming around to a point. I kind of forgot where I was going for a minute there, but I'm going to rally. The onus is on people to run who will represent the values that almost universally we will vote for. That's who needs to step up and run. I am a recovering addict. I have been arrested in my adult life. I ran for mayor anyway because they set a pretty low fucking bar in my town, right? And when people told me they wanted me to run for mayor, I reminded them, there's some things about my past that aren't exactly perfect. And they said, well, yeah, that's okay. You run anyway. And I got support, not at the poll, not so much on voting day, on election day, but I fundraised and I did pretty well. My point is that I was never dishonest about the things that I had done and where I had been in my life and what had happened. And I ran, and nobody threw rocks at my house or ran me out of town. I wasn't successful, but there were people that appreciated that I was even running, came out and knocked doors for me that didn't even live in the city of Port Richey. And, that's where most of my fundraising came from. And I think that's what most people that are watching this fight are missing, is you can be in this fight. And will you get your ass kicked by the Gus Bilirakis machine? Possibly. But if you show up and you're the right kind of candidate, eventually that bill's going to come due. And we could win some stuff. But we can only win some stuff if we run.
And have money.
And
raise money. Yeah.
And support.
Yeah, I think a lot of onus too are the people are on the people that make it to office. The best recruitment strategy is seeing that this works, and I think what the Republicans have figured out is they can just not do anything, and it demoralizes people. But their messaging and passing bills and getting the court to do stuff for them on all of this stuff that their base cares about, which is oppressing people. And so we need to do something our system works, honestly, to elect mediocre white man. And so Joe Biden can run 4 times and, lose 2, at least drop out another, and be elected president. And everyone think that he's the 17th best option and still not feel compelled to actually have, like you said, the urgency to do a whole lot. Though kudos to him. I do think that he doesn't get enough credit for, we did have a violent attempt at an overthrow, a week before he got sworn in. I do think
part of what they attacked was the scaffolding for the inauguration. So he pretty much walked into this shit right away.
Yeah. So I do admire him for, 1, not running away, and 2, navigating us through that month. That was probably a scary time that, there was nothing keeping them from trying again.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And, this kind of falls into Fred's category. Joe Biden was not my first choice, right? He was my 3rd or 4th choice. But when it came down to, looking at the scale between, continued Trump criminal enterprise in the White House and anybody else that was breathing and not a fascist, Joe looked pretty good from that perspective. And this is an incredibly difficult time to try and, unroll any kind of a presidential plan when you have to keep putting down the plan on a desk and picking up a bucket and putting out a fucking fire somewhere. And that seems to be what we've handed President Biden. So, 24 coming down the pipe. If we don't vote harder, Sam, in 2022, I think we might as well just stop talking about the 2024 election. I think it will matter.
Yeah, kind of. But I mean, I also think that we discredit the fact that Republican legislatures who have basically taken over a good chunk of the country and their states have made it so hard to vote already that it's not really a matter of getting people to care or not. I mean, there's people that literally can't get to the polls. There's literally people that can't get to the polls, or they are being fucked with by their supervisors' elections, people that are speaking Spanish that are being cast aside. That's the thing that I experienced in 2020 here in Tampa. We met a lot of Spanish-speaking voters who had tried to vote, and, awkward white people were just like, shoo, get out of here. We don't want to deal with you. I mean, there's just numerous reasons why voting is so hard. And unfortunately, we have elected people that, again, I don't think are meeting the urgency of the moment. And they're not fighting hard enough against that reality.
Okay. So
if we do, then 2024 is on the table. If we can do that, then it is.
Let's, for just a moment, let's make Sam, only because I know him better, Kyrie. That's the only reason. Or let's make either one. Let's make either one of you the head of the Florida Democratic Party.
I thought you were going to give us a fight.
Finally. This is why we did. This is why we started Florida for Change.
I'm not a brunch Democrat, but I play one on the internet. So, Kyrie, what would you if you had the power of the vast power of the chair of the Florida Democratic Party? What would your marching orders be to organizers right now? What would you want to see them do differently or more of?
Yeah, so Florida, as you guys can tell, isn't great about winning state level elections, but we are really good at getting stuff on the ballot and passing it, possibly because of our less than 70% literacy rate. But we should probably focus on what we're good at. We're really good at putting stuff on the ballot, getting, wealthy Democrats, John Morgan, to fund it and get it out. And we've been able to do stuff that people understand. Now, sometimes it gets watered down in the legislature, but there's nothing in the Constitution that says we have to do this once. Like, if they won't give us medical marijuana, then we go for something further. We have the votes for it. We have the passion for it. Instead, what we have been doing is focusing on, getting, which I think is a good goal, but getting more Democrats registered to vote. And fundraising. Now, the fundraising, and Sam, I think agrees with me on this, we waste the money, or we don't spend the money, or we put it on a billboard that no one reads. Again, possibly because we can't reach in the state. But I think we should put all of our attention and money towards getting people to run everywhere. Which, as you know, there's not really support in places that aren't heavily blue, or at least win consistently blue. I personally think that we should have more of a litmus test, and it doesn't even have to be super strong of a litmus test, but we're in the year 2022. If we can't get Democrats to support the national platform
or a minimum wage.
Minimum wage, if they can't even support the things that are on the ballot, when we got the $15 minimum wage passed, there were still lots of people that called themselves Democrats, Wingate Newton, who would just say, hey, we shouldn't do this, or we shouldn't put unnecessary blocks in front of business owners. And there were business owners that said we should do this. So I'm just we have to have a consistent message. And we can circumvent the state legislature by just putting it on the ballot. And then, this is still technically a democracy. And if it's on the ballot, we get the votes. They do have to address it in some way.
Right. But now, since that heyday of putting stuff on the ballot and getting it passed by the people, they've changed the rules on that now. They've made it harder for us to get ballot initiatives passed. And I was a part of the very first hugely successful Florida ballot initiative, which now seems like a minor fringe issue, but it was to ban net fishing in state waters so that our fish stocks would recover and fight the big commercial fishing industry. And we won handily. right? But that they started to recognize in that moment that if we kept doing that, yeah. So I think like the other part of what you said that was electing people everywhere, run somebody for everything. That's got to be the strategy because we'll at least win some of those back, right? Sam, you're now in charge of the Democratic Party of Florida.
So right before I take over the Democratic Party of Florida, I do just want to mention, I did Google it because I was pretty sure I was right as Kyrie was talking. We did actually limit citizen initiatives and like getting those on the ballot this year.
Yeah.
So even that has been severely stunted. But man, so I got to run the Democratic Party of Florida. I don't want to do that.
Sorry.
I don't want to. I'm tired.
So you're sort of like Joe Biden right now. I'm so tired.
Oh,
why now?
Come on,
why this election?
Jack, please. Come on, Jack. I've been told recently my Joe Biden impression is terrible. I'm just going to stop doing it. But what do I do? It's hard to say because the current state of it is such a goddamn mess. There's a kid that I know. I guess I call him a consultant. He's 20. So I'm not going to call him a consultant. He's a 20-year-old kid. And he's responsible for a significant amount of Democrats now running for state house races because the party couldn't even find people to run in those races. So last minute, he got a bunch of people to qualify, took some people's money, pooled it together, and got them to qualify. That's where current FDP is. I mean, am I building a fantasy FDP from scratch? Because you would have to. You would actually have to. The party is bankrupt, pooling together money from the Val Demings campaign and Charlie Crist. Our big ticket candidates are actually pooling money into the party to pool back to supporting them and hope that some of it just happens to trickle down.
Trickle down, yeah.
Yeah, we're doing trickle down with the party.
Trickle down campaign-onomics.
Yeah.
No.
Now, I mean, if I could, like, I feel like I would have to like diagnose by just like rolling back time and just mistakes that were made. I think that in general, one of the biggest things I can mention that Kyrie didn't is FDP's absolute fucking failure with dealing with the Latino population in Florida. I think that they are abysmal at it. I think that they have historically not invested in Spanish language media. I feel like they have completely messed up their messaging when talking to these people. And then they talk about the messaging in such a way, it's always like in public and they talk about them like this creepy monolith, just like, we're going to figure out the Latinos and they're going to like what we have to tell them. And I'm always like, they can read newspapers. They see you talking about them like these stupid, ignorant Cuban hillbillies or whatever.
I still run into people that think that all Latinos are necessarily progressive, and I'm like, right. They're pretty damn Catholic, and not universally. Again, there's no monolithic Latin population here. It's all over the place.
Right. But my favorite example of this failure is 2018. Everybody said, "Oh my God, how did Bill Nelson, who's been there for fucking ever, lose the election?" Well, Bill Nelson, even though he went to space, and to be clear, you have to be very smart to go to space. At least you used to be. You used to, if you were a NASA astronaut,
you're an engineer.
To be extremely smart to go to space. So I know he's a smart guy. He never learned Spanish. He never learned Spanish. He wasn't fluent in Spanish, and he had no Spanish language media. Rick Scott, fluent in Spanish, had Spanish language media months in advance of even the primary season.
Jeb Bush, same thing. George Bush.
Yes.
So George W. Bush, same thing.
Yeah,
all of them.
FDP has a hubris issue, and I think FDP has this issue where they just blame the voters, or they blame Latinos for not knowing what's good for them or something like that. And then they say things like that to Politico or Tampa Bay Times or Miami Herald, and then Latinos read that, and weirdly, they don't like reading things like that about themselves.
Yeah.
All right. So follow on lightning round question. Lori says, do we have an opinion on Gavin Newsom and his messaging in Florida? I mean, why can't we get as loud and in your face as these ultra MAGA people?
So I got to say, I agree. I would say tying it into what I said about ballot initiatives, it's like, yes, they did make it harder, but they didn't make it impossible. And the issue with the Florida Democratic Party is we don't actually do that because we're so big. We call it Big Tent. I think it's unorganized, and we don't want to have a steady platform and hold people to because we have, Republicans that are in our party that we have to appeal to. And so I think some of these things could be messaging bills, like, that's what the Republican Party is doing. Like, that's why DeSantis, who I think we're going to talk about a little bit more, that's why he went to war with Disney World, not because there's like any actual financial interest in it, any way he can actually win. It's all just like to keep people in a constant state of anger so they don't think about anything else. So we should do something less horrible, but similar. It's like, hey, it's really expensive to live in Florida.
That's the message right there. Democrats, less horrible.
I mean, that's what we've been running on. Like we were joking about Biden earlier, but like even like when he was running against Trump, like he was saying that he wasn't going to do like all the horrible like messaging stuff Trump was doing. Like really not a lot else different that he was like saying he was going to do. And so like in Florida, I think it would be important to stick to like the bread and butter issues like rent. I think you mentioned that you're a renter, and sure, like
half of
renting
town
sucks.
is renters. And what people told me to my face was they wouldn't vote for me because I didn't own any property and therefore didn't have any skin in the game.
Yeah.
What do you think happens to my rent when you raise property taxes on my landlord, dumbass? I don't know how you don't think renters count, but there you go.
Yeah. That's the system we have.
I mean, we are living in a rent crisis statewide. And hey, right here in Tampa Bay, we've got the worst one in the nation. I will bring up every single episode. We are living in historical times for struggling in Tampa Bay right now.
Hey, I've been seeing multi-generational households in my work as a counselor for over a decade since the housing crisis. And that's not getting better right now because I'm seeing more people I know stack up like that 2 or 3 generations deep in a home. Guess why? Because nobody can afford to live on their own anymore. What does that do for women who are in abusive relationships or family systems where somebody needs to get out for their own safety? Now they can't, or they're being taken advantage of by their children or grandchildren because they own the home and the kids are stealing from them. Like none of those things gets better with the kind of rent cost that we're looking at. Okay, so back to Lori though. Do we have an opinion on Gavin Newsom and his messaging in Florida? Did you guys like the message?
Mostly with
what part? Let me guess which part didn't appeal to you, Sam. It was the part where they showed riot cops and said, your civil rights are definitely better in California. While
yes, because I complained to you about it after I watched it.
Right at the exact moment that California cops are beating the shit out of protesters.
Yeah, literally a week ago. One of the actresses from Full House got brutalized by the LAPD. Like, and if he hadn't have said the fucking thing, it probably would have been a pretty good ad. I argued with my good friend Christian about it, who I think we mostly have the same politics, and he's just less into the civility of it all about this ad. And he said it wasn't really so different than anything like a typical Democrat would do. It was polished, and he had like this condescension to him, like he was like a manager trying to be like, we're all a family here. And I felt that. But it really is the context of the fact that the ad is only airing, I believe, today on Fox News in Florida. My dog has a lot of opinions on this. Yeah. And so the condescension and kind of like that typical Democratic sneer, I guess, that he's referring to is being pointed at someone. There's a target for it, which I think is interesting. So I like that it's scrappy. I like that it's kind of passive aggressive, almost in a Jewish way, just like, oh yeah, if you can't shake it out in Florida, come to California. Like I kind of like that.
Yes,
I know he's
Lori
thinking about
the
primary.
dog is probably right.
I mean, he is named after Carl Sagan, so he's a smart dog. Yeah, but I hear that he's trying to primary Biden in 2024, and this is part of him kind of like creating a national platform for himself. So, hang on, I'm being called by my better half. You guys,
I think
hi, Tiff.
Governor didn't understand how he
guys,
won.
there's somebody outside in my house. Okay. Who is it?
Hi, it's you. There you are.
Oh my God! It's It's Bernice Lorden.
It's our special guest
from
star.
Dream Defender. Yes.
I'm
Wow.
here knocking out the door. I'm like,
Hi. No, I have earbuds in because I'm
gonna drop Sam off for just a minute there.
Okay.
Kyrie, you had something you were trying to say there before.
I was just going to say, I think it goes back to an issue with the Democratic Party as a large. It's not just a Florida thing. It's just Florida. We've butchered it for decades, and then, like I said, we haven't had big wins, so we don't have a lot of things to celebrate or things to point to. But Governor Newsom, he survived his recall, but he was supposed to survive his recall, and it was close, and it was really expensive to survive his recall.
Right.
And he's governor of California in a stretch of the country where we have three triumvirs in Oregon, Washington, and California. And so they could be all working together to show what the, quote unquote liberal dream is, but they don't.
West young man
really
version
do
2.0.
that.
Right.
Well,
he did at the end of that commercial. Come on out if you can't hack it in Florida anymore. And I like that, and I get mad at the same time. I'm a pretty obstinate native Floridian, and as I said at the top, from the part of Florida history that none of us should be really proud of, but my dad changed. My dad moved on some things. I moved on some more things. We heal as we go, right? We try to move with the times and recognize the sins of our past. And for me, that means, paying attention to all the environmental things that have changed since the 70s and going the wrong way. And, pay attention to the plight of African Americans that were born in my state over the last 150, 250 years, the native rights. It means paying attention to what we got wrong and fucking fixing it. So I just feel like I liked the message. I was just a little resentful that it didn't come from somebody from Florida. Don't we have anybody better than Gavin Newsom? Don't we?
I mean,
to be somebody.
Of course
we do.
We have people that are better than Gavin Newsom in Florida. They're just, they're like state reps. We just don't have anyone with a platform.
Yeah.
A bigger platform.
Shouldn't we though?
Yeah.
I mean, someone like Anna Escamani got called a bargain bin AOC by Nikki Fried's comms director. So, we have that.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but does she have her own comic book? No, she doesn't. And I have the AOC comic book, so
love Anna. Anna Escamani's a hero, and she's her own fucking person. And fuck that guy, but
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? We killed an hour here.
How
about that?
Hour. Yes.
Yeah, and I know, Sam, you got people coming by.
I do. You're coming.
We may get down there. Let see how Misha's doing. She was, back to sleeping when I left the house.
You got his name wrong. Now you're not coming over. Like, what's going on?
I'm a rainy day activist. That's a sunny day activist. I don't know what I am. However, I want to make sure that I say thank you to Casey Marion, who is in the comments today, for supporting our show. Thank you to Fred Eater for your help on Patreon. We appreciate it. We know how thin things are for you, and as I say, we'll just be sliding the same $10 a month back and forth to each other on Patreon forever. That's how we do. I want to make sure that I'm going to share a screen here. Give me just a second. I had it pulled up and then I put it away. I want to make sure that we say a special thank you to our friend Kelly Smith, realtor, real estate agent. For more information, you can call her at 813-716-8454. You can get a hold of her at Kelly Smith Realtor, flrealtor.com. That's where her web address is. You can copy that from the screen later if you want to. This is what I know about Kelly Smith. Kelly Smith, whatever she learns about by memorizing huge stacks of data, so you don't have to. So, maybe it's not time for you to buy or sell a home today, but you're thinking about how to do that. Kelly's exactly the right person to call to ask your questions early about how you prep your house, how you prep, how you pre-qualify or don't pre-qualify for financing, why is now a good time or a bad time. Kelly's going to be straight with you. This is what my father always taught me. Develop a relationship with your doctor, your insurance agent, and your realtor, because back in his day, you just had a guy who was your insurance agent and you went to him for everything. It's weird. It's not like that anymore. But I really do believe that having a relationship with somebody like Kelly means that when you do get offers or want to think about buying or selling a home, you'll have she'll know who you are, and you'll know who she is, and that makes a big difference when you're talking about transacting huge amounts of money in real estate to buy or to sell. My point is, Kelly Smith is sponsoring our show. We're very grateful for that. And we're going to have her on as a guest because she's a fascinating person. And when we talk about people that get fatigued because nobody will run for things, she's run for things several times in our community. And it's really demoralizing when you lose. And to the same people for the same reason, that we're raising about 10% of the amount of money as the Republicans in our community are. And there's just no way around that. I mean, one of her contributions in kind was $12 for donuts. And meanwhile, Mike Moore, the guy she ran against, had, I think, $17,000 in in-kind donations. That's the kind of campaigns they run. And so, when we say run somebody for everything, run for something, we got to think about what the Florida Democratic Party is doing for local candidates who are trying to get elected to local seats. Because where do we think our bench of national legislators comes from? It comes from having people who have run before, know how to fundraise, who know how to run campaigns for people that fundraise, and can get the job done. So thank you, Kelly, for your sponsorship. Thank you, Kyrie. And thank you. What's your name again? Sam.
Shmuel. It's actually Shmuel.
Yeah.
Before we go, I do just want to do one really quick thing. I'm going to share my screen. There are a couple actions coming up to get people a little bit more involved, because we always say don't just vote. So got to give people places to go. Can you all see my screen?
No, I'll put it up. I got to give you controls. I don't know why that's not happening.
You really got to give me controls, man. I thought I was your co-host. I thought it was your pal. Can you see this now?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is actually tonight. This is being done by the Party for Socialism and Liberation. It's a protest for reproductive justice. It is going to be at St. Pete City Hall. It starts literally in 40 minutes. If you happen to be in the area, or you get there, within an hour or so, recommend go on by, make some noise, meet some people that are like-minded. And then we also have this coming up. If you are a Tampa resident, we need you at City Hall on July 14th at 9 a.m. We're trying to make public comment about the housing crisis because, as we just said, we have one of the worst, if not the worst, in America. And our elected officials are sadly not taking it seriously enough, including city council members that think it's funny to be like rent control, rent stabilization. I don't know what those words mean. They know what they mean. They're almost all lawyers. They're smart people. They're fucking with us. And then finally, I think this is a very interesting event. My good friends at the Restorative Justice Coalition are going to be doing. It's a book club discussion of a book called Revolting Prostitutes, The Fight for Sex Workers' Rights, which, the title kind of says it all, kind of tells you exactly what's going to happen in it. So if you pull up this event, or somebody can drop it into the comments, I can do that myself. There is a sign-up form for their book club, and they're constantly reading interesting and engaging literature and nonfiction about leftism and expanding how we feel about abolition in all of its different forms. Check it out.
Right on. Let me. I just want to build on that for just a second. And I went to my daughter Grace, my younger daughter, went to Columbia College in Chicago, and when we went there to tour the campus and get her set up for moving, she'd never lived where there's snow before. She went from Central Florida to Chicago. She's like, Dad, I know it's going to be cold. I'm like, no, you don't understand. You could break in half and freeze to death in Chicago. Anyway. One of the places we went was the original huge library, Chicago Public Library building, which is now, believe it or not, the system is big enough to have a museum of the Chicago library system. And that's if you ever played the game Midtown Madness, that's the building that you were able to drive through, is the old Chicago Public Library building. And all through it, there are different areas and different things. In the basement, there's actually a protest sign workshop where they have big sewing machines and printers. They make protest signs, and if you have a library card, you can check out a protest sign to go to the park because it's right across from the park. It's just amazing to me that they were that progressive. That protest was something they actually help you participate in. But one of the floors of the museum had a whole display about the book Our Bodies, Ourselves, and I want to think for a minute. I want you to think for a minute about how radical this was in the early and mid '60s. That the Chicago Public Library system was having readings of that book. And for many women of color, it was the first time anybody had ever talked to them about anything related to their own sexuality, their own gender, their own rights as human beings. And that developed into what became the Jane's movement. That developed into what became the fight for abortion rights in America. So I just want to say that reading groups like that sound to us like, holy shit, that's radical. Yeah. And that can be normalized. It can normalize over time to the point where a public library honors the reading groups that started around that book. They provided dozens and dozens of copies of it to little groups that would meet at their local branch library. And there's a huge pictorial history of that movement in the Chicago library system. So be radical, right? You know, radical moves closer to the center of the Overton window the more we de-radicalize the ideas. At one time, the idea that Kyrie is walking around a full citizen in our society was a radical idea. The idea that women could vote was a radical idea. Maybe again, maybe we're just re-radicalizing. I don't know. But my point is, it's okay for you to become radicalized. And I say that as a middle-aged cishet man who has been really radicalized by life in the last decade in my state. Be out there, be supportive of people that have more energy for it than you do. Take a case of water. If you can't walk the protest march route, take a case of water and put it in your trunk and hand out bottles of water to people that are protesting. Do things, be involved, support in any way you can. And maybe we turn this around. If not, shows like this will go away, and they'll go away because people like us will be silenced. And we know that you don't want yourself, the people you count on for gaslight sheltering. We know you don't want us silenced. You don't want yourself silenced. And the only way through that is that we make enough noise now that it doesn't get there.
Sagan is making enough noise for all of us right now.
Sagan, my favorite organizer dog.
Sagan.
Kyrie, man, it's nice to meet you finally, and thank you for joining us today.
It was nice to meet you as well. Thanks for having me.
All right, and anytime you want to come back on, man.
Yeah, one small plug.
I
won't share any slides or anything, but also since we are in a hunger crisis, and I work for Feeding America, feel free to make some donations. And if you don't want to make a donation of money, a lot of the local food pantries are also running low on food. So if you have surplus food, maybe some baked beans you aren't going to eat tonight that are already canned, not anything cooked, donate them to your local pantry.
Tell me the name of your organization again.
Feeding America.
Okay.
It's not my organization. They don't give me any control.
Oh, okay. I thought that maybe who you were organizing for.
No.
All right.
And I second your comment on helping out however you can. I really appreciate when people hand out water at protests. It's amazing.
I mean, we can do something like Mishi and I know we can't go stand in the heat of the sun at a protest. We will die. So what we're going to do is get lawn chairs in our cooler and sit somewhere along the way and hand people cold water when they need it. Even the other side, I saw that happen at Pride. We kept the Pride protesters here in 2018 from getting dehydrated because they were miserable standing out there. And so we're like, it's air conditioned inside. You can come right inside the venue. And they were, I don't know if they thought they were going to, like bump into somebody and turn lesbian. We don't know what they thought, but we were taking the bottled water out there on the sidewalk. So be that guy, be that person. All right. We love you guys very much. We'll be back next Monday with another show. Don't have any idea who the guest is going to be. Could be Kyrie, could be Bernadine, could be just anybody. But we'll get back to you next Monday. And Sasquatch is real. Love you.
Bye.